Hello and welcome Art Base family. This is Dede Reed and my name is Lissa Ballinger. I'm the curator at the Art Base. Dede Reed is our current exhibition. It opens Friday, January 15th, and the exhibition comes down on Friday, February 19th. So you have over a month to come and see this exhibition of 22 photographs that you can see behind you. They are extraordinary photographs that really require an in-person visit. Of course, we are following all protocols here at the Art Base. We welcome you from Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 5 p.m., and we hope you will come see these. The exhibition is entitled Reflections, and it is generously sponsored by the Alchemy Foundation, and I'm going to get started with some questions with Dede right now. I'm going to step out of the frame so we can demask and have an intimate conversation about this extraordinary work. So first of all, Dede, let me do a little brief introduction to Dede, put her on the spot a little bit more. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dede is a photographer and a writer. She was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. She attended the San Francisco Art Institute and then also the University of Colorado. She has done residences at Anderson Ranch or workshops at Anderson Ranch and at the Aspen Writers Conference. She has been represented by galleries in New York, in Aspen, in Mexico, and in California? No, Maine, excuse me, Maine, I can't read my own handwriting. And she splits her time between New York, Colorado, Maryland, and France, which sounds exhausting to me, but probably pretty exciting too. So first of all, Dede, I have to say one really important element of this exhibition, and this will tie into your relationship with the Art Base, but Dede has generously donated all of the proceeds of this exhibit to the Art Base, which is an incredibly generous act. And so with that, I really wanted to start the conversation talking about your relationship with the Art Base.
Okay, I can't remember exactly the year, but there was a moment in our house up on Cypress Drive when Maggie Woods and Sophie and my sister Janny Goss and Deb Jones and I got together to talk about sort of what the Wiley was all about and what we might like to do, having interest in art with it. And so Sophie went on the board for a year or so. And our family has a foundation called the Thendara Foundation. And it gives to 501c3 organizations like the Art Base. And so since then, we have been giving money here and there to the Art Base with great pleasure. And so that is kind of how it began. And I've been gone most of the time, so I haven't really been sort of present for a lot of the things that are happening at Art Base, but certainly some of the parties I've come to and organizations, exhibitions I've seen have been fantastic.
How much time do you actually spend in Colorado?
Well, it's changing because my husband retired in March.
Hooray!
So don't know exactly, but in the past it's been Christmas vacation, a month in the summer, 2 weeks in March. So we'll be here more.
Did you quarantine here in
We did.
Colorado?
We came out a week early, just thought we would beat the problem. And when we left New York, there was one person in the hospital, and a week later, you know the story.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's go back a little bit further, and maybe you could tell our listeners and viewers how and when you started making art. I mean, you obviously went to the San Francisco Institute of Art, so this was something that you have pursued really seriously, but do you remember your first experiences?
Well, I remember going out to Wyoming as a fourth grader, and I had a movie camera. So that was the first time I looked through a frame and realized that there was something compelling about that. Not sure what it was at that age, and since then I don't know if I really thought about it, but then I came to CRMS when I was 16, and photography was offered, but by coming out here I was just in awe of the beauty of the scenery, and I began to notice I was seeing things very particularly, like sage with snow on it, or rocks down by the river, and so I signed up for the evening class, which Franz Berko was teaching.
And many of our listeners will know this, but Berko moved to Aspen in 1949 to be the first photographer of the Goethe Bicentennial in Aspen, and he's an icon in the Aspen photography world.
Oh, he certainly is. And
so you were taking the class with him at CRMS?
Yes. So his daughters, Nora and Gina, were there with me.
Oh, how great.
And he came, obviously, any excuse to come down and see them, but once or twice a week was a good reason to come. And I certainly didn't appreciate who he was at all then. In hindsight, I certainly do and have. But he was a very quiet force and just simply showed us how to work in the darkroom. Didn't criticize our work. I think his idea was let them go out and discover whatever, there were about 6 of us, need to discover. And at that time I was really enjoying doing double exposures. I thought it was really cool to take a picture of a friend and then put grass over it. And I don't think he thought that was necessarily very artistic, but anyway, that was kind of one direction of experimentation that I was enjoying. But I learned, the most important thing I think I learned was the quiet of the darkroom and the absolute pleasure of seeing those images coming up through the deck doll. It was just unbelievable to me. It was like magic.
Yeah.
And so that's how, another thing about Franz is that I had lived in Switzerland when I was 15 and just really fell in love with Europe and Europeans. And CRMS at that time was not just Franz coming from Hungary and Germany and then France and England, but there was, my German teacher was Swiss, and Roger Paris, kayaking teacher and French teacher was French, and there was another man, German from Colombia, and then another Englishman, Wells Kerr, from England. So it was a very international feeling. And, but I was impressed that Franz was foreign. That really made a big impression on me.
Yeah. So tell us the progression then from darkroom photography to what we have behind you. What is on exhibit right here? And maybe you can break down the process, although there is something, as Matthew, our incredible installer extraordinaire, said, there's something magical about not knowing about the process of these and just absorbing them as they are. But I do want you to share, because it is a really unique process that you went through.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course I started with 35 millimeter cameras and then moved on, and I stopped photography for a while and did snapshots of children and trips, things like that. And then in about 1988, I was walking in Maine with my mother and my sister, visiting a friend's house, and I saw a dock jutting out from shore in a certain sort of geometric way that absolutely impressed me. And I didn't have a camera on me, my sister did, and I said, I've got to borrow your camera. And so from that moment on, I just became absolutely compelled to want to take, or make, is the proper way of saying it, photographs. And so that's when I started Anderson Ranch and built a darkroom in Old Snowmass, and worked then with Hasselblad and Holga cameras, which I loved, square format, and still do. And then along came, well, first of all, I moved to New York, got remarried, and couldn't have a darkroom. And then along came digital. And of course, I resisted it for a while because I thought I was a purist. And I loved the darkroom, especially because with 4 children, I could lock the door. And disappear, and just have that peace and sense of creativity. I also did a lot of palladium printing, which was a challenge, but very fun. So digital came along, and I bought a Nikon digital camera, and one day I was visiting my brother, and I picked a pair, and I said, well, I think I'll photograph this pair. It was not a very attractive pair, but I've got to figure out some way to make it different, something special about it. And I, of course, had no idea. So I put it on the windowsill, and it was raining, and I thought, well, if I could find a background, something. And I opened up the cabinet in my husband's house, which I was, second marriage, was not my things in that house, and found this Bakelite tray. It actually wasn't this one, it had mallard ducks on it. And his son had given it to his mother, my husband's ex-wife. And so I turned it around, I thought, gosh, it's kind of interesting. I'll put this behind the image, and so, or behind the objects. And so I placed the pair, and then I found another one or something, and I realized that by tilting it slightly, that it looked beyond the objects into the surface here, that the reflection was very interesting to me. Soft, but it was also a bit gray. And so I went to the store and bought some construction paper and came back. I bought some more fruit, asparagus and cantaloupe and all kinds of things, and started experimenting and created sort of little light boxes around it with the paper. And when I put it on the computer and did this on Photoshop, there's an adjustment called levels, and it makes everything pop a little bit. And it popped, and I thought, wow, that is really just the kind of thing I would like to explore, because it reminded me of a monoprint.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not at all artistic in terms of using my hands but I have loved watching all my friends with their working with monoprints and felt very jealous. So this sort of felt something that I was kind of approximating that. But the problem with, this is a pretty clean tray. I started buying them from eBay. And they all have a slightly different, with this Bakelite plastic made in Monterey, California for some reason, surface. Some of them are a little bit sharper than others. And all, though, have these scratches. This one less so, and these things. And so I had to Photoshop out that. And that was very time consuming, but so rewarding when finally it was all clean. And so anyway, that's how I got into it. And I spent about 2 years, thank you, or more doing it. And I set up, when we went to France, I would set up in the doorway. So they were always in doorways or in a window, but
So they need a lot of light.
yeah, and a lot of, usually evening light, or sometimes
Ooh.
morning light.
Interesting.
But anyway, so I just set up, made setups with funny things to hold the sides, and it was not a very professional looking studio, but it worked. And I was just so pleased to get such a clean look out of my very rustic system.
Yeah, and the images, hopefully again, everyone viewing today will come in to see these in person, but they're so painterly. They're obviously very soft focus. I don't think anyone could have imagined the process to which you got to these final products. But the subject matter, as Dede described, include vessels and fruit and some vegetables and books. And trying to think if I'm missing anything. I think flowers, of course. But one of the things I really want to focus on is books, because the other amazing element of Dede is that she's a published author. And I would love for you, it's so curious to me that two totally different relationships with an artistic medium. You know, it seems like you're pretty focused on photography, whether it's digital or darkroom. But then you have this whole other world, which is words. And can you tell us about being a writer and how being a writer informs your photography?
Well, I think what people, when they read my writing, they say, this is so photogenic, or I can picture exactly what you're talking about. And so I think that I have the same interest of trying to describe something that matters to me, that I see or feel through writing. But I came to a point, I started writing, I felt also compelled to write. I read Jim Salter's, he's a local Aspen man, read his book called Light Years in 1986, and when I finished it, I said, I have to write. And so I went down to the basement of our little house we had on the end of Ute Avenue, and my father had given us, each children, these huge IBM computers, original ones. But it was a way for me to have a word processor, because my handwriting is absolutely illegible.
I did notice your signature is tiny in these.
I'm very, very insecure about my signature. But anyway, I mean, I suffer from when I have to use, I'm left-handed, and I just suffer when I have to write. So this was just a way to find my own words through this word processor. And so I started writing, but then I realized I got to a point when I couldn't express what I wanted to express, and so I turned back to photography, thinking the black and white photography for me, especially the square format, offers some emotional connection that I find very profound. And I've always felt that anything can be beautiful if it has light on it, a beautiful light on it, or intense light, or a certain kind of light. And so that was another reason to get back into photography and just try to find simple pairs or whatever it was to photograph and explore that whole thing. And then I finally got back into writing again. But
are you writing right now?
I just finished a book, and it's now available on Amazon, called The Turkish Girl, on December 7th.
Congratulations. I did not know that. That's a huge success.
Yeah.
Do you feel a weight relieved, or is this, or
Yes.
sort of a chapter closed? And
No, but I feel scared because there's always this thought, can I drum up the energy to do it again? Will it still come out the way I want it to? But there's also a sense of kind of excitement of right now, just hoping things are kind of settling in my mind, or where to go next. And the book is short stories, so it varies from different places, and lots take place in Europe or Mexico. And so for me, it's a way of vicarious travel also when I write. And also it's a way to meet new people who are obviously an extension of myself, but they're also people that I invent. And that's just interesting to me. It's just a way of getting beyond, feeling like I'm expanding a little bit more outside of my own framework.
And is this series, this reflection series, is it complete, or will it be an ongoing process?
No, I don't know if I can remember how to do it.
Really?
I mean, I can remember how to do it. For example, somebody saw it and she said, I've got all these pots, they're sort of Morandi shaped. I'd love for you to photograph them. I'm going to send them to you. And I said, well, I'll try. I can't promise it.
Yeah.
And she sent them to me and I set them up and it just did not work.
Yeah.
And I think
it's actually sort of wonderful that it didn't work,
yeah.
that it doesn't apply to everything, that this
Exactly.
isn't a universal technique, that it works in certain lights and in certain circumstances.
Right, and so that's what I would have to really reinvent the whole thing. And I felt constrained because of the size of the tray that I could only do this size. And therefore, I think I just finally tired of it. But I worked hard at it, and it was hard to kind of keep drumming up different compositions, different things.
Yeah.
I kept fruit in the freezer I'd bring out and use again sometimes, and try to make, how does a book look more interesting,
right?
Tilting rather than
right, with one page,
yeah.
Elevated up. What books, can I ask, do you remember what books are in your selections here?
Well,
are the books important, I guess is the question.
They're all mostly French.
Okay.
And also because the reflection, if you look closely, everything's backwards in the titles. Yeah. So my husband's was a French aficionado of French literature and collected them and read them. So they're French classics basically. But I love them because I love the Gallimard press in France, and just the simplicity of how the books were bound.
And handling these pieces, which I was fortunate to be able to do, you chose a really heavyweight paper for these. It's almost, and that seemed consistent because, like I mentioned before, the work seemed so painterly, and the weight of the paper is really extraordinary. That's obviously deliberate?
Well, I've usually used Hahnemühle paper, which you can get in various heavy weights, and because of my printer in New York, I had to use a lighter weight. It's just too complicated. So I asked Tony Preikel to print these, and he said, I don't have Hahnemühle, but something similar. And I said, well, let's just see what you have. And so he printed 4 of them, and I went into a studio and I looked at them, and they just seemed to be more luminous than the Hahnemühle paper. And so I think that paper really makes a big difference. Certainly being shown like this without frames, it's imperative. But I'm not sure that the heavyweight, once it's framed, is really going to make a difference or not.
Yeah, but maybe the saturation, like the colors are so saturated, and that really, it feels like they just sort of bleed into the paper, which
yeah,
again,
I had that same experience with the Hahnemühle, and it's just, I don't know why, it's just the luck of the process, I guess. And also Epson printers are beautiful printers.
Yeah.
So
what is your next photography project? Are you going to return to the darkroom, do you think? Or are you?
I have returned. I bought a printer for out here, which I never had since, and I got Brenda Manns to help me set it up and figure out how to format books so that I could take one sheet of paper and have 4 photographs on two on each side, and then folded, and they're faced the proper way. It's quite complicated. It's not hard to do, but you have to think
Right.
as you do it.
Right.
And so she helped me do that, and so I've been really having fun. I call it my COVID occupational therapy.
I love
I'm
that.
making these hand-sewn pamphlet booklets, sort of like a chapbook, and I started out with doing photographs, and because it was November when I started, I made 4 booklets for each of my kids with family photos, etc. And then I moved on to my own photographs and for trips I've been on. And then I finally thought, well, here I am, I can't travel, but I have a museum in our house with books of artists. And so I have started taking pictures, vignettes of, for example, hoppers, not any of the people, but in the corner. It would be just the architectural corner or the window or curtain blowing in or the view out the window.
Hopper paintings.
Edward Hopper paintings,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And so that was really fun because it was kind of looking at his paintings in a whole different way. So I've just been continued with that. And yesterday, for example, I did paintings of pictures, vignettes.
In paintings.
Yeah, clouds and paintings. And it was just a wonderful way to spend the day looking at beautiful shades of color.
And tuning in your attention to particular details in paintings too, and then allowing the viewers to see that little vignette as well. That's wonderful.
Well, it's having traveled a lot and gone to museums, I would get very tired of biblical paintings, but I found that the landscapes in the back of them were absolutely exquisite.
Yeah.
And so that's the next thing I'm going to try to do, is just the sort of bucolic, beautiful paradise, palm trees, clouds, horizons interest me.
Is this the first time you've seen, not every one of the 22 pieces is exhibited in the art base, at the art base right now, but is this the first time you've really seen it installed and exhibited together?
Well, certainly installed in this brilliant fashion, thanks to you.
What do you think? How are you feeling about seeing all of them together?
I think it's great. I mean, for example, when we were setting it up and we had it on the floor, I was a little bit worried that, was it too many colors or clashing? And the fact that you thought to paint the wall this charcoal color and then figured out how to put them up is just, I feel fantastic about it.
Me too. I'm so thrilled with how they exhibit. They're really extraordinary pieces. And Dede does have an example here of one that is framed. As I mentioned before, each one of these pieces, the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds goes to the art base. They are so reasonable. They are $200 each. They are uneditioned. And let's just talk briefly about your decision to not edition them, because I think people are always curious about that decision. How photographers choose or printmakers choose to edition pieces or not.
Well, I think, first of all, because it's digital and it's easy to represent reproduce rather. And it's something that I don't have to do. I can have somebody like Tony do it for me. Makes it less necessary to have it be sort of a precious edition. I mean, I think editions are important, and it's important how the price changes, and et cetera, et cetera. And I just feel like they're kind of calm but cheerful pictures that can belong anywhere, and they don't have to be just preserved for certain people that can buy it or get to it first, if that's ever the case. So I just think they should be available. And I think that, they're different enough that they're not just poster-like.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dede. Do you have anything else you want to add for the viewers? Again, our hours here at the Art Base are Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 5. We are available by appointment at any time. So please contact us if you have any specific desires. But we really hope you come and visit this exhibition. And thank you so much, Dede, for first of all, giving all the proceeds of this work and putting so much effort into this. It's really extraordinary. We're very grateful.
Well, thank you for this amazing opportunity. It's very exciting.
Thank you, everyone.